And we are live. It's Dr. J in the house. I have Aaron Alexander with y'all in the flesh. Aaron's a good friend. He is a movement specialist, got a phenomenal new book out called The Align Method. He has a podcast at alignpodcast.com. Aaron, welcome to the show, man. How we doing?
Thanks so much for making time for me, man. I appreciate it.
Excellent. We're really excited for you to be here. So you got a book, man. So you've been seeing patients for a long time. You've kind of taken all this knowledge you've accumulated, and now you got a book. So let's tell the listeners about this book.
Yeah. So the book is essentially a compilation of the meaningful parts that I've found working with clients for the last 16 years, and then particularly the podcast for the last 5 years, and being able to gather information from world's leading experts on everything from movement and physical therapy and things of that nature to consciousness and nutrition and all the parts that form the human structure. So our physical patterns represent much more than just the types of bicep curls or pull-ups or such that we do. Your physical posture, you're always, you're a walking book, and every movement that you make tells a story. And those movements are an expression of the way that you are formed by your home, by your office, by your travel, your usage of your cellular devices, computers, the food that goes into your mouth, the thoughts streaming through your head. All that comes through the body. And we don't really get a really strong, cogent education on that throughout elementary school or any school for that matter, unless you go to like school for like improvisation or something of that nature, acting, dance. So what the book represents is like a field manual for people to understand deeply how to drive their body effectively to be creative and confident and strong and flexible and stable and all those adjectives that people would prefer.
Very exciting. I got my copy coming this weekend. So over the Christmas break, I'm definitely gonna gobble that up. I appreciate that. Very cool.
Yeah, of course.
Anytime I go into the airport, because my training is chiropractic initially, so I'm very trained in movement and muscles, and I get that. And you sit in the airport and you just kind of sit there and you kind of people watch, right? People walk by, you're like, oh, this muscle's not working, or maybe this problem's going on. You're kind of like diagnosing like on the fly and in your head, like what could be the issue. So is there like 2 or 3 patterns that you see with most people just across the board in things that may not be correct or optimal in their movement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so people, the tendency, if you look at, Albert Einstein has a quote. He said that the field contains and regulates the particle. So you and I, Justin, are a couple particles floating through space and everybody else listening, and we get regulated by the field that contains us. The field is the shape of your chair, the shape of your car seat, the shape of the plane seat, the shape of the stroller and the child seat, and the shape of your postural patterns as you're looking into the phone or the computer. Even the shape of your eyes as you are inside looking at walls close up to you, and perhaps not getting ample sunlight, which literally changes the structure and the shape of your eye. Goes through this whole chemical reaction that allows you to be able to have depth of vision. So we are continually being molded by our environment and, common postural patterns. Like you wouldn't even need to look at the human animal to see what the postural patterns would be. You could just look at the modern environment and you could devise what the patterns would be without ever even seeing a person. So I would imagine patients that come see you could probably close your eyes and with like 90% accuracy, be able to guess that they probably have some like upper cross syndrome happening in their forward head posture, more medial rotation of the shoulders. The head of the humerus is kind of like sitting on the precipice of disaster on the glenohumeral fossa there. And there's tension up in pec minor or major in the front, and maybe the knees may possibly kind of collapse inwardly a little bit. That valgus formations going on. Maybe the glutes are a little bit disengaged, might be tight around the hips. It's like, oh wow, crazy. How did we just describe 90% of human beings without seeing? It was like, well, just look at the world.
Right.
And of course, and so if we bring a little bit more awareness into how we occupy our physical bodies in this modern structural mold, we can be better than the mold. There's nothing inherently wrong with the mold. It's only if you allow yourself to be like dust in the wind,
Yeah.
then it's a real problem. You do not want to get bossed around by the modern mold, because if you do, you'll become a modern statistic. And if you look at statistics, they're not pretty.
Okay. Yeah, no, totally. That makes sense. So you see some of these classic patterns, right? Like you mentioned, kind of like the forward head posture, the tight chest, the deep cervical flexors are really maybe weak. We have weak rhomboids, weak posterior chain.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what type of stretching or workout or soft tissue program, what are the first steps in that next program to improve posture, to improve health, improve performance? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, so as long as a person is consuming supplements and then eating a shit diet, it's going to become expensive and they won't ever get the results they're really looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as a person is seeking out some form of temporary self-care, panacea, bandage technique,
Mm-hmm.
and not addressing what's happening before and after that, we're not even really having a conversation yet. If
Mm-hmm.
we're getting temporary relief through doing certain practices, that's great. But something as simple, like one of the chapters in the books breaks down the value of just spending more time on the ground, as opposed to in that archetypal punched over sitting position that we're in so much. So something as simple as that is like get a comfy rug in your home, get a couple foam rollers, maybe throw a yoga mat down someplace, open up space in your home that there's more spaciousness for you to move around. Maybe you're inspired all of a sudden to have like a little dance party with your kids, because like, wow, we're not banging our legs up against that coffee table, because we kind of moved that aside and we made it kind of like threw some pillows and
Yeah.
rugs down, and we kind of like, cool, like, wow, we're like wrestling in the living room now, like crazy. How did this happen? So as opposed to driving to see a physical therapist and massage therapist to ameliorate all these issues that manifested themselves from the environment, what if we start to look at the environment and create some adjustments so it actually, that the field that we're contained and regulated by shifts a little bit. So that would be one example, is just spend more time on the ground. The floor is a noble therapist, and it's like, it's your massage therapist, it is your physical therapist. It doesn't charge anything. If you lay down on your back on the floor, find a comfy rug, you don't have to like be on cold tile as you do it, and you find bits that feel hard, figure out how to unharden them. The way that you do that is spending time leaning into them, breathing, rolling, twisting, emphasizing that exhalation, especially because the exhalation activates more of that parasympathetic, calming, rest, digest side of the nervous system. You
Yeah.
could maybe even make some moans or make some sound. Oh, that's oming in yoga. I mean, that's like,
Mm-hmm.
sounds like some crazy new age shit. Oming. Oh my God, I hate it when they go in and have you do there's deep science behind.
Vibration.
Yeah, there's deep science behind the value of long exhalations, breath holds, that vibration like you're referring to. So that's all wrapped up into one simple practice that you pay $25 to go to a class and have a teacher tell you to go, and spend time on the ground. What if I just allowed some of that to enter into the way that I work on the computer or my cell phone, or maybe how I eat breakfast? So that would be the first thing. And then another thing that would be very simple, a way to augment your environment in a simple way to have huge changes, is throw a pull-up bar in between a doorway. Throw a pull-up bar into a couple doorways, and find a tree branch outside would be even better. And every time you walk through that doorway, give yourself a little hang, and that's going to be some decompression therapy for your shoulder girdles, for your spine, open up spaciousness around the lungs, even the heart and the organs. The way that they function is through movement. Motility. If they are contracted or immobilized, stuck, the functionality of your organs will be diminished. So if you're just putting things into your face, anticipating that to heal your liver and your gallbladder, that's a huge value. Like, it's like you're the raw materials you put in your body is what you become. But how do we get those materials into the body? The way we get them into the body is through movement. So that would be a couple starting places. Get your arms up over your head, change your environment.
The
So there's a
hanging.
reason
I
to
like
do
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole chapter about that as well.
That's
And
cool.
then, simply just when you have opportunities, get down on the ground, do a deep squat. You're waiting for a bus, or, go Vietnamese style and pull out a cigarette and go into a deep squat and hang out for a moment. I'm joking about the cigarette. Smoke a cigarette if you want to. I'd rather a person that spends time on the ground and squats, it goes through their full range of motion and smokes, than a person that doesn't do any of that stuff but eats an immaculate super new age vegan diet or whatever. Like I would, if you can go through those ranges of motion, your body, there's a lot more, you're like insulating yourself with movement enough that your body can kind of buffer a lot more stress.
Yeah, every time I see you, I always notice you're on the ground, you're in some kind of like Indian style kind of thing, like kind of feeling it out. Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting. Very cool. So like, what does your workout routine look like? So, we're talking about the average person and some of these postural patterns, but what does yours look like? Is it regimented? Is it kind of, you kind of feel yourself, where you're at and you adjust it day to day, or is it something that you have written out already for you?
No. So my background was very much that I kept journals and notes, and I was very meticulous with reps and sets. And, I was like eating every 2 hours and just stuffing my face with all the supplements. And, so it's really focused on bodybuilding particularly. And it was effective in the sense that hypertrophy happened and muscle cells grew and expanded and I looked bigger. But as an athlete, I became worse. I became more clunky as a mover. Injuries manifest themselves, stress, anxiety, chronic pain, stuff like that, just built, because I wasn't really looking at any like inside approach at movement or fitness. It was all superficial. So as long as we're living on that superficial aspect of, the beach muscles or the glamour muscles, you're missing out on any of the parts that actually make you feel whole and make you feel well inside, and also open you up to relationships. Because if you live your life through superficial validators, then you're just gonna have a bunch of people around you stroking your superficial validation, as opposed to ever actually like loving you for something more than your biceps or car or money or watch or whatever the thing that you put out to the world for people to love. I realize I'm kind of going out in the deep end, but I think that's like the origin story of my fitness, was like get as big as I can so that people will love me. That's essentially was my thought behind it.
And so it sounds like you went through an evolution. Obviously, you started off kind of more in that bodybuilding mindset, and then moved more into a performance kind of functional mindset. And how, so you obviously kind of bodybuilding style movements is where you started, and then how did that evolve to where you're at now?
Injuries, like a fool who persists in their folly will eventually become wise.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you get injuries, and also changing environments. I moved to Hawaii when I was 18 and lived out there for a while, and then moved to Boulder, Colorado after that, and lived in the mountains. And, my goal was to be like the coolest dirtbag rock climber. And then in Hawaii, I wanted to surf and do jujitsu and, just be in the jungle and be able to run across rocks real fast and all that stuff. And so just by naturally changing your environment, again, back to the Einstein quote, you will shift. So sometimes if we are a fish and we are in an aquarium, and the aquarium there's some type of whatever toxic stew or something that we're living in. And you're like, okay, what can I do what kind of, pec workout or booty workout or supplement can I take? It's like, dude, have you observed your aquarium? Like there's no way you're going to change. You're so deeply steeped and entrenched in that mold. Like you're just an expression of that space.
Right.
So that's kind of an interesting thing of like, sometimes I think literally just physically changing your locations can be a really powerful workout plan. If that's not conceivable, I mean, I understand that's a little bit of like a far stretch. I think just spending more time outside in general is really valuable. So a lot of the fitness that I will do, I train at Gold's Gym in Venice, here in California, and
awesome.
I pretty much only train in the outdoor area. So it's just, I take my shirt off, I take my shoes off, and I'm exercising my skin cells through receiving that sun and adapting to that, and the sun into my eyes. And then you're also with community, so community is a very powerful tool for self-care, healing, strengthening. When we feel separate from our community, there's a thing called failure to thrive that I'm sure you're familiar with. And babies, if they don't get adequate amounts of touch, then their metabolism slows down and their development starts to screech to a halt, because that sends a signal. That lack of contact and support sends a signal that it's not a safe time to regenerate and grow and get big and strong and use all these calories. We need to go into a hibernation mode, essentially just go into winter mode and wait until someone is there to support our growth. So if you can put yourself into community situations like the conferences that we met at,
Yeah.
the reason that we go to conferences like that, no one gives a shit about talking about ketosis or what, who cares? We're there to be with each other. I understand ketosis is valuable for certain things, and maybe carnivore is too, and maybe vegetarian is, maybe vegan is, whatever your dogma is great. But the underlying aspect of all of these dogmas in the form of food, motorcycle gang, religious gang, whatever it is like, oh, we just these human creatures that really love to be in community, and we like to feel supported and we like to feel connected. And if you disconnect that part and you separate the individual from the tribe, that's when things get funny. The longest, I know I'm talking a long time, so I'll stop after this. The longest longitudinal study was done in I believe it was Harvard. I think it started in 1936, but you got to fact check that. And they found they followed students throughout their whole entire life, still today, and also their kids. And what they found was the people that had the tightest knit community, they felt really supported and connected with their tribe. They were the healthiest. So it didn't matter that they were, who ate the most magnesium or who did the most burpees. It was like, who feels loved and who feels like they have purpose. So I think that love and that purpose is a foundation of fitness, but it's a little bit sometimes sexier, perhaps, for like the cover of Muscle and Fitness to talk about doing muscle ups. So that's a, in large part, a roundabout way of describing some of the components of the book. The book essentially illuminates like the abstract aspects of fitness that I think for the most part have been missed, but I think are in fact the foundation of our wellness.
And you really put the community aspect in there, which I think is really big. I like that. But I want to get a little bit more in the nitty gritty of what you actually do, though. So, like, all right, you're out in Venice Beach, right? Which is really cool. That's where I think Arnold started his lifting days here.
Still trains there.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool. Wow. So your shirt's off, you're getting vitamin D, right? All that good stuff. And then how long are your workouts? Do you kind of have a plan in advance, or is it totally intuition? And what kind of movement patterns are you doing?
Yeah. So the primary basis of the book is that your whole day is a workout. So right now, as we're having this conversation, I'm on two knees. I'm kneeling. I'll go all between to one knee and then the other knee. I might at some point do like a malasana, like a deep squat thing. I have the computer's up on my cold plunge, so literally I have fitness underneath the computer in the form of cold thermogenesis.
That's awesome.
You can see behind me, there's a sauna, so that's another form of fitness, expanding, contracting myself at a cellular level. Behind that, there's a ladder that goes up onto the roof. So climbing that ladder, exposing myself to sun, all of that's fitness. If you look at hunter-gatherer tribes or people from, developing countries and such, the idea of, what's your split and, 3 sets of 4 and get out the neon colors and the puffy sneakers and go for a run to burn some calories. They're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, are you crazy? Like, our lives, like, I am fitness, like this, so what I'm far more interested in is cultivating more of a relationship to becoming fitness and becoming, yoga and becoming all that, so that's one part of that. And then I do go to a gym and I do like to work out. I also go to Santa Monica Muscle Beach, which is like acro yoga and acrobatic stuff. And it's a big adult playground essentially. So I'll climb ropes and I'll do parallel stuff, dips and handstands, and I'll pick people up. So I do like acro yoga. And then I use a lot of kettlebells when I'm at the gym. So I find kettlebells to be very valuable in that you can go through a wide variety of ranges of motion, and they actually, the motion, say for example, take like a Turkish get up. If there was
Hmm.
one exercise that people got out of this conversation, if you really want unexercised and you're tired of this like nebulous, like go walk outside more for your fitness stuff,
Right.
um, look up Turkish get up. I have lots of
Hmm.
videos on YouTube about it, or just look up the term in general.
Yep.
It's also my online program plug. So that Turkish get up is you're using a kettlebell, you're laying on your back, you're pushing that straight up, and then you're pressing that up into the sky. You're coming up onto a knee, you're putting your hand down, and then you're coming up into a lunge position. Then you're standing up, and then you're reversing that motion. That's a really beautiful symphony of movement that you can take your whole structure
Right.
through, that integrates all the parts.
You have
If
like
you,
a hip thrust, you have shoulder girdle, you
yep,
have your whole
yeah,
core stabilized or
it really
lunge, and then
nails
you
it.
reverse it.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
nails it. I mean, it's a really good one, and then, if all you do is yoga, I would recommend you do more dynamic movement, maybe take a West African dance class or play soccer or football or something, because yoga is something that I value greatly. The asana aspect of it, the other limbs are cool too, but most people hear yoga and they think like the stretchy part, as it's one of the 8 limbs. Um, that's really great, but it lacks human interaction. So it lacks that kind of partner, what you get from like dance or martial arts,
Yeah.
which develops your brain a huge way. It lacks much pulling movements, so adding in some like pull-ups or some
Hmm.
rows, get a stand-up paddleboard, maybe go out. So I realize that the things that I'm saying is not exactly structured, and there is some intention behind that, because I think structure is valuable, and we broke down specific structures in the book of things, actual practices people can do right now. And I think it's very valuable for us to a certain degree, allow the structure to fall apart just a bit, and for that movement practice to kind of spill more into other aspects of our lives that we weren't expecting it to before, such as like a boardroom, an office, a school. And if we can move as we learn, then we can learn. If you don't move and you just cram your brain with information, the cup is full, man. Like, you need to consolidate some memories, so doing like a Pomodoro technique or something of that nature, we described that in the book as well. Do 25 minutes on of intentional work of some sort, and then take a 5-minute break, go for a walk, like literally consolidate those memories, give yourself some spaciousness to allow your mind to wander and take a break so you can be fresh and bring new information in. But the Western model of education is such that, okay, we got to get these kids passing these tests. They got to pass these Scantrons, man. And so,
Exactly. Yeah.
and so, all
Exactly.
right, we're going to fill these facts up into your little brain, and it's like, dude, the kids don't need facts filled in their cup that runneth over.
Exactly.
They need spaciousness to allow their minds to adapt to a creative, dynamic environment, like, life, business. That's what it is.
I appreciate the perspective, man. It's quite holistic. Now, in the book, I know you utilize as a tool some of these bands. Can you
Oh
talk
yeah.
more about that? How do you apply it?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of asking you 2 questions at once that maybe you'll combine the two. How do
Yeah.
you also work on pliability within that? Is that just part of the movement? Do you do other things to improve the pliability aspect so the tissue quality is healthier when you're doing the movement? How does that look?
Yeah. Well, so our bodies are essentially like 640 aqueous pockets, that we're like these fluid,
Mhm.
slippery, slidey pockets. It's 640 is the number of muscles. It depends on the person.
Yeah.
And depending upon your movement patterns, they can start to get gunked up and stuck and dehydrated in certain positions. Once you get gunked up and stuck like a dam, that dam builds up more and more and more, and it gets crummier and dingier and darker. It's a similar thing in your physical body. If there's nooks and crannies inside of your body, which I guarantee you there are in mine, as well, I'm working on it. Um, they will become backed up, and something that you can do, like I mentioned, just spending some time, on the ground, that's a helpful starting point. But resistance bands are a very powerful tool as well. So the Align band that you're referring to is it's a heavy duty resistance band that has a door anchor, and you can attach that to any, car door or hotel door or closet door or what have you. And then you have a resistance band hanging down that you can use to literally like floss out different joints. So that shoulder that's rolled forward, a really powerful tool. It's called banded distraction in physical therapy terms. You can press that band, wrap it around the front of the shoulder, and then step yourself away from the band, and then it will start to pull that shoulder back. Now you're creating this opening, expansion through the shoulder, and then you can reach the hand back behind you and turn the head off to the left, and you're doing this little pin and stretch myofascial release banded distraction to just do like a word sandwich of all the different things that are happening there, with a really simple, cost-effective, portable tool. And as you do that, once you start to create a little movement in and around those potentially bound together pockets, new hydration manifests in that space, and now you have a healthier joint. If you have a healthier joint anywhere in your body, that trickles through the rest of the system. So now my shoulder's moving better. Oh, cool. Now all of a sudden I have a little bit more rotation through my spine because I'm not bound up like a straitjacket. So it's Andrew Taylor studies a quote said that harmony dwells where obstructions do not exist. So if we can go through and find those dammed up, agglomerated, dehydrated obstructions through our body, speak into them in the form of myofascial release in this example, but there's other ways to do it beyond that. Then eventually we start to find more freaking harmony in our body.
Excellent. Very good. I was first introduced to the bands by Kelly Starrett in his book, The Supple Leopard. He kind of introduced that kind of concept to me. And then I saw he wrote the foreword on your book. So that's quite interesting. Was he an inspiration at all for some of the band work or anything else in what you do?
Oh yeah, man. Kelly's been a huge inspiration. I mean, he was the first. So I was the roof of my perspective of what I could create from like a lens of a career was having a successful clinic in anywhere. This is Bend, Oregon, where I did, and before that was Boulder, Colorado. So seeing, for me, because I spend like some pretty meaningful time with people. It's like an hour and a half of being with people. Seeing 20 people a week and having a couple people working with me in one space, that was like, oh, the dream. And then I got into watching Kelly's work about maybe 5.5, 6 years ago, and started observing the power of replicating what I'm doing at an individual level with, more people on YouTube, and so I essentially just like worshiped everything he was saying and just really studied it very intently. And then from there, I started creating my own stuff. And then, 6 years later, it's very fascinating to have him write a really flattering foreword in the book and then have him even read it in the Audible version. So it's a very fascinating experience to kind of come full circle and have like mother flipping Kelly is like, saying how Aaron's a nice guy or whatever in the forward. Now it's a very fascinating experience to have that full circle moment. But yeah, I mean, the Align method is a continuation of Kelly's work. It's a continuation of Katie Bowman's work. It's a continuation of Andrew Still, osteopathy. It's a continuation of dead philosophers. It's I ain't creating anything. I've been an aggregator. That's what being a podcast host is being able to aggregate a bunch of really amazing
Pulling
ideas into one spot. So the book is a further aggregation of all that stuff mixed in with a little bit of my own actual practice.
Exactly. And you're probably highlighting things and emphasizing things, maybe taking and riffing on certain things that resonate more than others.
Yeah.
That's powerful. And so interesting. So you incorporated some of the band work. You gave an example of some of the shoulder stuff, which is really interesting. You're kind of doing like almost a self myofascial release on that.
Yep.
I like the term flossing that joint. That's a really interesting term.
Yeah.
How else can that be utilized?
Band?
Outside of the shoulder. Let's say maybe the hip or some other major area that you see clinically.
Yeah, for sure. Well, okay. So if we're saying hip, why not just jump down to ankle? And because the ankle is the hip, if you have issues in the ankle, then that's going to manifest themselves upstream into the hip and vice versa. So I'm kind of doing that to be clever, but also, to prove a point. But there's also a lot of great exercises that a lot of people have adhesions and stiffness in and around the ankles, because we don't go through a regular full range of plantar and dorsiflexion in like the modern world. We're kind of stuck at around 90 degrees. And if you're stuck in that position, things begin to freeze over. Muscles,
Right.
everything stiffens up and it develops, and because your body just adapts to its container. Whatever position you put yourself into, your body will adapt to that position. It's very amazing. It's beautiful. So something that people can play with if you do feel like, hey, I'm trying to do this deep squat stuff I see on the internet. It's important. It's like valuable to be able to do a malasana or like a third world squat or whatever you want to call it. But when I do that, I always kind of fall backwards. I don't get it. So your ankles aren't going through deep dorsiflexion. So something that you can do is that same banded distraction or flossing type technique that we were referring to before. You can wrap the band instead of your shoulder. Now put it around your ankle and step yourself forward into like a runner's lunge type position.
Yeah.
And then keep that back heel that the band is wrapped around. Keep that back heel down flat against the ground and push yourself forward into a lunge position. And then you're going to have that you're stacking variables. So we're doing the resistance thing from the stretch, but now we're also doing the banded distraction. We're flossing that joint out by wrapping around the like kind of like the apex of the curve there of the joint. So we're also doing myofascial release, so we're starting to get those tissue layers to slide a little bit because of the pressure of the band on the ankle.
Yeah.
And then you can incorporate another principle in the chapter 3 in the book. We break down all the fundamental principles and practices of people for like driving your body more effectively from a self-care perspective. And one of the principles that everybody can use right now is called contract relax, or PNF, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. So taking yourself while you're in that lunge, to use that as the example, press that back foot down on the ground. So press those toes like you're trying to dig those toes down to the ground.
Yeah.
It's going to be activating the calves, gastrocnemius, soleus, all that stuff. And then hold that for about 5 seconds. Press.
Yeah.
And then relax. And you'll find yourself like magic go into a deeper stretch on that ankle.
Yeah.
So simple principles like that. Like we outlined 2 specific techniques, but you can take the fundamental principles from those 2 techniques. The reason that it's relevant to mention those 2 is you can pick out those basic fundamental principles, and they are consistent with every other technique in the book. And I think with most ones that are like really helpful. So it's like if you know, what's the word? There's space in the quote. There's one from Miyamoto Musashi of something along the lines of like, if you know, I don't remember how it goes. If you know something deeply, you can kind of take that understanding into other things as well.
Yes.
So if you understand one of these techniques well, and you really understand the fundamental principles of it, then that will spill into the work with your knee and your hip and your spine and your neck. And sometimes we get too lost in the complexity of things and think, how would I ever know how to do all this stuff? It's so many 640 muscles. And it's like, no. These fundamental basic principles, really learn those, and then that will spill into the rest of your body.
That's awesome, man. Really cool. So is there anything else you wanted to kind of go over or kind of dive in deep in the book with the listeners here now? Anything else on your mind?
Yeah. Well, I think it's very fascinating to think of. So the last section of the book is about, it's called Moving Your Senses. So looking at this movement conversation, going beyond, again, the muscle ups and bicep curls in the gym, and looking into how our visual muscles, that is a form of fitness. So if I am chronically staring into a phone or a computer screen, then that literally puts my nervous system into a little bit more of like a sympathetic fight, flight, executive function, get her done type state.
Right.
So what I can do is I can embrace looking out into using my panoramic vision, look out into the distance, look out a window, open that window to get full spectrum of light on your eyes. It literally changes the structure of your eyeballs. You're being exposed to sun. That's correlated with the high instances of myopia, nearsightedness. So spend time, bring your awareness into the yoga of moving your eyes in a variety of positions beyond just staring into a screen with such regularity. And so when you do want to focus, you'll notice this with people. If someone's kind of like spacey, they're kind of like new age, out there, whatever person. Sometimes they might kind of have that, like, they look a little bit like they're just blurring their vision, kind of just like looking out into space. They're like, you're so spacey, man. It's like, yeah, their nervous system is kind of stuck in that spacey aspect. Then someone else that's more of like New York City, get her done, way
Yeah.
too much
Focus,
coffee.
focus. Totally.
Their vision is like a shark, so they're so
Right.
they're very good at the executive function, get her done, but what they do not know how to do is relax. They do not know how to stop doing something. When they stop doing something, that's when the deck of cards starts to feel like it's going to fall apart, because I'm like, oh God, like I've always occupied myself with something. My shark eyes are always going. So you can play your own nervous system. If you're feeling stressed, maybe allow your vision to kind of go a little bit into that same spacey, blurred type, just looking out into the distance type vision. Look out a window and get a panorama. Look over the ocean, look over trees, look up at clouds. If you're feeling stressed, don't look at your cell phone. That's going to focus that vision into more of that stress state. Put the cell phone down, maybe put it on airplane mode, listen to a podcast or something like that if you really want to have the cell phone with you, and walk outside and look up at the trees. And what you're naturally is going to happen with that, not only will your vision change, which affects every other aspect of your physiology, but your postural patterns change because you're looking up instead of looking down. So bending our perspective of what the meaning of fitness is just, it's an invaluable perspective change. And that's what we did in the Align Method book, which was co-written actually by my man Phil White, who he's done stuff with. He co-wrote with Kelly Starrett and Laird Hamilton for XPT and Pavel Tsatsouline, and I mean he's like a legend in all this stuff. So yeah, it's just been such an honor and joy getting to put this thing together. So appreciate talking about it with you, man.
Excellent, man. Well, I really appreciate it. You go over some pretty deep stuff that really stretches my brain a little bit to take it all in. I like it. It's excellent. Okay. And Aaron, you got a podcast as well. People that are listening, go to alignpodcast.com. Make sure you subscribe. I've been on there. Aaron's been on my podcast before this. I think your second or third time back on the show. Yeah. So that's pretty exciting. Also, the book. How can they get the book?
Well, this will be out. I mean, just Amazon, bookstores, whatever. I mean, it comes out December 24th. So it's before then you can go to thealignbook.com and do the pre-order stuff. There's like prizes and bonuses and such. But wherever you get your books, Amazon's probably the most likely place, but go hit up a bookstore if you want.
Perfect. I'll take the link and put it in the description of the YouTube and the show notes. People can access it easily. Very cool. And how about some of the course stuff that you have? I know there's a course tied to the book. If people don't have the book, how do they get to be part of the course?
Yeah, for sure. So the course is called the Align Method, and it just goes deeper into the principles of the book in video form as opposed to reading. And so essentially it breaks down everything that the book is, so it's fundamentals of self-care, fundamentals of how to integrate better movement into your life, lifestyle stuff, morning routines, nighttime routines, all that. And they can get a 7-day free trial as well. So you can find that in the bio of my Instagram or go to, alignpodcast.com.
Alignpodcast.com.
Yeah. And then /Align Method, or just go to the programs tab from there. But yeah, I highly recommend that as well. And it's all, like I said, it's a 7-day free trial. So you can check it out, get some value out of it. And then, that's it.
Excellent. Anything else you want to leave with the listeners, Aaron?
I think perhaps something that I find valuable is looking at life from the present moment as though I'm kind of like on my deathbed or getting close, so looking back, say I'm 90 or, whatever, and giving myself advice from that position. And I think the common theme of advice that I get from, 90-odd-year-old Aaron is to, one, stress less, enjoy more, and open yourself up to be loved and to love. Because in the end, you won't give a shit about any of the money that you made. You won't give a shit about any of the books or online programs or houses or whatever. What you'll care about is the moments that you shared with others and yourself. So the sooner that a person can tap into that, I think the more fulfilled their life will be, and then everything else will come along with it, as opposed to what we so often do. And we do all of these superficial things in order to get people to love us. But in fact, oftentimes we ended up pushing away the people that loved us the whole time to go and seek out those things so that finally somebody will love us. Anyways, that was a long explanation, but essentially it's like open your heart.
I like it, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah, you have a very unique perspective in how you word things. I think it's great. Very cool, man. Well, make sure you head over to Aaron's podcast and get the book and all that stuff here. Aaron, really appreciate it. We're going to make sure this goes live here, hopefully this coming Monday, so people can get access to it before the book launch. Aaron, thanks so much, man. You have an awesome day, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Take care.